Marcus had always believed that love could conquer anything. At 25, he worked double shifts at a construction site, his calloused hand a testament to years of honest labor. Every evening, covered in dust and exhaustion, he would return to the small apartment he shared with Elena, the woman who had stood by him through 3 years of struggle. She worked as a waitress at a local diner, her tips barely covering groceries, but her smile never wavered when he walked through that creaky door. Elena had dreams that sparkled in her dark eyes. She spoke of opening her own restaurant someday, of traveling beyond the narrow streets of their neighborhood, of building something beautiful together. Marcus would listen, holding her close on their second-hand couch, promising that better days would come. They saved every penny, counting dollars like precious gems, planning a future that seemed both distant and inevitable. Their love existed in stolen moments between exhaustion and hope. Sunday mornings when they shared coffee and dreams. Late nights when Elena would massage his aching shoulders while humming old songs her grandmother taught her. They were poor in everything except the wealth of their connection, or so Marcus believed until fate introduced him to Victoria Blackwood. Victoria entered Marcus's world like a hurricane dressed in designer clothes. She was the daughter of a real estate mogul, visiting construction sites for her father's latest project. When she first saw Marcus operating the crane with steady precision, something stirred within her that money had never bought. Victoria was 32, divorced, and accustomed to getting what she wanted. What she wanted was Marcus. The seduction began subtly. Victoria would appear at the job site with expensive coffee for the crew, her eyes always finding Marcus. She complimented his work ethic, his strong hands, his quiet intelligence. When she invited him to dinner at the city's most exclusive restaurant, Marcus hesitated, thinking of Elena waiting at home with leftover soup and dreams of their future. But Victoria was persistent and sophisticated in ways that made Marcus question everything he thought he knew about himself. She spoke of opportunities, of connections that could transform his life. She painted pictures of success that seemed impossible from his current vantage point. Slowly, insidiously, she planted seeds of doubt about his relationship with Elena. During one of their secret dinners, Victoria leaned across the white tablecloth and whispered words that would haunt Marcus forever. She told him that love without financial security was just beautiful suffering, that Elena deserved better than a life of constant struggle, that sometimes the greatest act of love was letting someone go before you drag them down with you. The night Marcus made his choice, Elena had prepared his favorite meal with their last $20. She had found a small job cleaning offices that would start the following week, and her eyes shone with excitement as she shared the news. She spoke about how every extra dollar would bring them closer to their dreams, how proud she was of their journey together. Marcus watched her animated face and felt something die inside his chest. Victoria's words echoed in his mind like poison. When Elena reached across the table to touch his hand, he pulled away, claiming fatigue from work. That night, as she slept beside him, trusting and peaceful, Marcus stared at the ceiling and made the decision that would define the rest of his life. The breakup was brutal in its calculated coldness. Marcus told Elena that he had realized they wanted different things, that their dreams were incompatible, that he needed space to figure out his life. He watched her face crumble, witnessed the exact moment when confusion turned to heartbreak, when love transformed into devastating betrayal. Elena begged him to explain, to fight for what they had built together, but Marcus had already crossed a line from which there was no return. 3 days later, he moved in with Victoria, trading his worn work boots for expensive suits, his honest labor for a position in her father's company. Elena disappeared from their neighborhood like smoke, leaving behind only memories and the ghost of what might have been. Victoria's penthouse, overlooking the city skyline, became Marcus's new reality, but the golden cage felt colder than he had anticipated. The marble floors echoed with emptiness despite being filled with priceless art and furniture that cost more than he had earned in entire years. Victoria showered him with gifts, expensive watches, tailored suits, a sports car that gleamed like liquid silver, but each present felt like another chain binding him to a life that didn't quite fit. The position at Blackwood Enterprises came with a corner office and a salary that made his construction wages seem like pocket change. Marcus found himself making decisions about projects worth millions, signing contracts that affected hundreds of lives. Yet he felt more powerless than ever before. Victoria's father, Harold Blackwood, treated him with polite condescension, making it clear that Marcus was there as an accessory to his daughter's happiness rather than for any real merit. Months passed in a blur of corporate meetings, charity galas, and social events where Marcus felt like an actor playing a role he never auditioned for. He learned to speak the language of the wealthy, to discuss market trends and investment portfolios. But late at night, when Victoria slept beside him in their king-size bed, he found himself thinking about Elena's laugh, about the way she would hum while cooking their simple meals, about dreams that felt authentic even if they were impossible. Victoria was beautiful, intelligent, and genuinely seemed to care for him, but their relationship felt like a business transaction disguised as romance. She planned their future with the same precision she applied to her investment portfolio, discussing wedding venues and honeymoon destinations as if checking items off a corporate agenda. Marcus tried to love her the way he had loved Elena, but passion cannot be purchased, and authenticity cannot be manufactured. The guilt was a constant companion that no amount of luxury could silence. Marcus would drive past the diner where Elena used to work, hoping for a glimpse of her, but she had vanished completely. Her former coworkers claimed she had moved away, possibly to another state, but no one seemed to know where. The apartment they had shared was occupied by strangers, and their mutual friends had chosen sides, leaving Marcus isolated in his new world of artificial relationships. Victoria began pressuring him about marriage, dropping hints about engagement rings and destination weddings. She wanted to announce their engagement at her father's annual charity gala, a glittering event where the city's elite gathered to congratulate themselves on their generosity while spending more on a single evening than most people earned in a year. Marcus felt trapped between his growing discomfort with this life and his fear of returning to financial uncertainty. One evening, while attending a gallery opening with Victoria, Marcus overheard a conversation that chilled him to the bone. Two of Victoria's friends were discussing him with casual cruelty, referring to him as her latest charity case, wondering how long it would take for her to grow bored of her construction worker toy. They speculated about whether he was truly attracted to Victoria or simply seduced by her bank account, their laughter sharp as broken glass. The realization hit him with devastating clarity. He had become exactly what he had always feared being seen as: a gold digger who had abandoned genuine love for material comfort. The irony was bitter and complete. In trying to escape poverty, he had lost his integrity, his authenticity, and most importantly, the woman who had loved him when he had nothing to offer but his heart. Marcus began to question every decision that had led him to this moment. Victoria's initial seduction, which had seemed so flattering, now felt manipulative and calculated. Her father's job offer, which had appeared generous, now revealed itself as a way to keep him dependent and controllable. Even their relationship, which he had tried to convince himself was real, felt hollow when compared to the deep connection he had shared with Elena. That night, as Victoria slept peacefully beside him, Marcus made a decision that surprised even himself. He would find Elena, somehow, somewhere, and beg for her forgiveness. He would explain that he had been weak, confused, and foolish, but that his love for her had never truly died. He would prove that the man who had betrayed her was not the man he really was, that somewhere beneath the expensive suits and corporate facade, the person she had fallen in love with still existed. The search for Elena consumed Marcus like an obsession that burned through his carefully constructed new life. He hired a private investigator, spending thousands of Victoria's money to track down any trace of the woman he had abandoned. The investigator's reports came back sparse and frustrating. Elena Vasquez had indeed left the city 3 months after their breakup, but her trail went cold in Chicago, then resurfaced briefly in Denver, before disappearing entirely into the vast anonymity of a country full of people reinventing themselves. Victoria noticed his distraction, his late nights spent staring at old photographs on his phone, his reluctance to discuss their future together. She confronted him with the directness that wealth often afforded, demanding to know what was troubling him. Marcus deflected, claiming stress from work, but Victoria was too intelligent and too experienced with men to be fooled by such obvious lies. Her questions became sharper, her surveillance more subtle but persistent. The private investigator finally found a lead that sent Marcus's heart racing. Elena had been spotted in Austin, Texas, working at a small tech startup. But when Marcus called the company, desperate to hear her voice, he was told that Elena Martinez, the name she was using now, had left 6 months earlier to pursue other opportunities. The receptionist mentioned something about a business venture, something about her having some kind of breakthrough, but the details were vague and ultimately unhelpful. Meanwhile, Marcus's relationship with Victoria deteriorated with each passing day. She had begun making wedding plans without his input, booking venues, and sending save-the-date cards to her social circle. When Marcus finally worked up the courage to suggest postponing their engagement, Victoria's reaction was swift and brutal. She reminded him of everything she had given him, every opportunity, every comfort, every advantage that had transformed him from a common laborer into someone who belonged in her world. The argument that followed was vicious in its honesty. Victoria accused him of being ungrateful, of pining after a woman who clearly didn't want him since she had made no effort to contact him. She pointed out that Elena had abandoned their shared life just as completely as he had, that if their love had been so profound, she would have fought harder to keep him. Her words cut deep because they contained enough truth to wound while being cruel enough to destroy. Marcus realized that Victoria had always known about Elena, had probably investigated his past before pursuing him. She had calculated the risk of his former love interfering with her plans, and had decided she could manage it through manipulation and luxury. The discovery filled him with a rage that surprised him with its intensity. He had been played as expertly as a chess piece, moved around a board by someone who saw relationships as games to be won rather than bonds to be cherished. The final break came during Harold Blackwood's charity gala, the very event where Victoria had planned to announce their engagement. Marcus stood in the ballroom surrounded by the city's elite, watching Victoria work the room with practiced charm, and felt the last of his illusions shatter. These people lived in a world where everything could be bought, where love was just another commodity to be acquired and displayed like expensive art. When Victoria clinked her champagne glass and called for attention, preparing to share their engagement news with the assembled crowd, Marcus simply walked away. He left the ballroom, left the hotel, left Victoria standing at the microphone with her prepared speech about love conquering all differences in social class. He drove her sports car back to the penthouse, packed his few remaining personal belongings, and disappeared into the night. The next morning, Marcus woke up in a cheap motel room, unemployed and effectively blacklisted from Harold Blackwood's extensive business network. Victoria had made sure that every construction company in the city knew he was persona non grata, effectively trapping him between a world he could no longer access and a world he no longer wanted to inhabit. He had lost everything for the second time in less than 2 years, but this time the loss felt like liberation rather than devastation. With his savings nearly depleted and his bridges thoroughly burned, Marcus made a decision that would have seemed impossible just months before. He would leave the city entirely, start over somewhere else, and dedicate himself to finding Elena, not to win her back, but to apologize properly for the man he had temporarily become. He bought a bus ticket to Austin with his last credit card payment, carrying nothing but a backpack and the faint hope that somewhere in America, the woman he had betrayed was building the life they had once dreamed of together. Austin welcomed Marcus with the indifference of a city accustomed to people running from their past. He found work with a small construction crew, his skills still sharp despite months of corporate softness. The pay was barely enough for a studio apartment in a rough neighborhood, but the honest work felt like redemption after the gilded cage of the Blackwood Empire. Every morning, he would wake before dawn and spend an hour searching online for any trace of Elena before heading to the job site. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Maria, an older woman who ran the food truck where Marcus bought lunch, mentioned a young Latina woman who had started a small catering business nearby. She described Elena's distinctive laugh, her way of humming while she worked, details that made Marcus's heart pound with recognition. Maria provided an address, and that evening Marcus found himself standing across the street from a small commercial kitchen, watching through the windows as a familiar silhouette moved with practiced efficiency. Elena had changed in ways that went beyond the professional attire and confident posture. There was something different in her bearing, a self-assurance that seemed to radiate from within. She was directing a small team of employees, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had learned to lead through necessity rather than inheritance. Marcus watched her for hours over several days, building up the courage to approach while simultaneously dreading the moment when she would see him. When he finally knocked on the kitchen door, Elena's assistant answered, a young man who looked at Marcus with suspicion when he asked to speak with the owner. Elena appeared behind him, and the recognition hit her like a physical blow. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the weight of betrayal and time hanging between them like a wall of thorns. Her face cycled through emotions, shock, pain, anger, and finally a cold composure that was somehow worse than rage. Elena stepped outside, closing the door behind her, creating a barrier between her new life and the ghost of her past. She looked at Marcus with eyes that had learned to see the world differently, and her first words cut through him like precision blades. She asked him what he wanted, why he had come, whether Victoria had grown tired of her charity project, and sent him back to beg for a second chance at playing the poor boyfriend. Marcus tried to explain, his words tumbling over each other in desperate succession. He spoke about regret, about realizing his mistake, about months of searching for her to apologize. But Elena listened with the patience of someone who had already processed her pain and moved beyond it. When he finished, she smiled with a sadness that somehow contained no bitterness, and told him that his apology was unnecessary because she had already forgiven him long ago. The forgiveness was not the absolution Marcus had expected. Elena explained that his betrayal had been the catalyst for her transformation, the cruel gift that had forced her to discover strength she never knew she possessed. After leaving their city, she had worked 3 jobs while taking online business courses, sleeping 4 hours a night, and living on determination and coffee. She had started her catering business with $500 borrowed dollars and built it into something that was beginning to attract attention from investors. Elena showed him photographs on her phone, images of elegant events she had catered, corporate clients who praised her innovative fusion cuisine, a food truck she was launching next month. She spoke about expansion plans, about a restaurant she was designing, about dreams that had grown beyond anything they had once shared. Her success was not measured only in dollars, but in the confidence that came from proving to herself that she could build something beautiful from the ashes of devastation. As they talked, Marcus realized that the woman he had fallen in love with had evolved into someone even more remarkable. Elena had taken their shared dreams and made them real through her own effort, without compromise or shortcuts. She had become the entrepreneur she had always wanted to be, but she had done it alone, proving to herself and the world that she needed no one's rescue or financial backing to achieve greatness. The conversation ended with Elena extending an unexpected invitation. She was catering a major event the following weekend, a tech conference that would host some of the most successful entrepreneurs in Texas. She offered Marcus a job helping with the preparation, not as charity, but because she genuinely needed extra hands and trusted his work ethic. It was an opportunity to see what she had built, to witness the full scope of her transformation, and perhaps to find some small way to contribute to her success rather than diminish it. Marcus accepted, knowing that this would likely be his only chance to be part of Elena's world again, even temporarily. As he walked back to his apartment that night, he felt something he hadn't experienced since leaving Elena the first time. Hope mixed with genuine pride in someone else's accomplishments. The tech conference was unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced, a gathering of innovators and entrepreneurs whose combined wealth could have purchased small countries. Elena's catering team worked with military precision, serving gourmet meals that earned standing ovations from attendees accustomed to the finest things in life. Marcus watched her command the kitchen with natural authority, her team responding to her directions with respect that had been earned rather than inherited. During a brief break between services, Marcus overheard conversations that made his blood run cold with recognition. Several attendees were discussing a major real estate development project back in his home city, a project spearheaded by none other than Harold Blackwood. They spoke about environmental concerns, about communities that would be displaced, about the kind of ruthless business practices that prioritize profit over human cost. Marcus realized that Elena's success had brought her into contact with people who could expose the Blackwood Empire's darker dealings. Elena noticed his distraction and pulled him aside, asking what was troubling him. When Marcus mentioned Harold Blackwood's name, her expression shifted subtly, revealing knowledge that surprised him. She explained that through her networking in the business community, she had learned about the Blackwood family's reputation, about their pattern of acquiring struggling properties through intimidation and legal manipulation. She had also heard whispers about Marcus, about the construction worker who had briefly been Harold's daughter's pet project before disappearing. The revelation that Elena knew about his time with Victoria hit Marcus like a physical blow. She had known who he was when he appeared at her kitchen, had known about his betrayal and his subsequent fall from grace, yet she had still offered him work and treated him with dignity. Her forgiveness was even more profound than he had realized, rooted not in ignorance, but in full knowledge of his failures and weaknesses. Elena's success story continued to unfold throughout the evening as Marcus watched her network with potential investors and partners. She moved through the conference with confidence that came from genuine achievement, introducing herself as the founder of Vasquez Culinary Enterprises, a name that carried weight in Austin's business community. Several attendees mentioned hearing about her innovative approach to sustainable catering, her commitment to using local ingredients, and her plans for expansion that could revolutionize the industry. During the evening's keynote presentation, the speaker discussed the importance of authenticity in business, about companies built on genuine passion rather than artificial market positioning. Marcus found himself thinking about the contrast between Elena's organic success and his own brief stint in the corporate world, where everything had been handed to him without effort or merit. Elena had built something real from nothing, while he had accepted something artificial that ultimately meant nothing. After the event concluded and the cleaning was complete, Elena invited Marcus to join her for a late dinner at a small restaurant she frequented. Over plates of simple, perfectly prepared food, she shared more details about her journey since leaving their hometown. She spoke about nights when she had cried herself to sleep, wondering if she had been wrong to dream so big, about moments when failure seemed inevitable and surrender seemed appealing. But Elena also described the turning point that had transformed her grief into determination. She had realized that Marcus's betrayal, painful as it was, had actually freed her from limitations she hadn't even recognized. Their shared dreams had always been compromises, scaled to what two struggling people could achieve together. Alone, she had been forced to dream bigger, to take risks she might never have considered if she had remained comfortable in their small life. Elena revealed something that shocked Marcus to his core. She had recently been approached by a group of investors interested in franchising her business model, an opportunity that could make her wealthy beyond anything they had ever imagined together. The preliminary numbers being discussed were staggering, figures that would put her in the same financial league as Victoria Blackwood, but with the crucial difference that Elena's wealth would be entirely self-made. As the evening wound down, Elena made an offer that left Marcus speechless. Her expanding business needed an operations manager, someone who understood construction and logistics, someone she could trust to oversee the physical expansion of her restaurant empire. It was not charity, but a genuine job offer based on skills and potential. She wanted to know if he would be interested in helping her build something extraordinary, something that could employ hundreds of people and change how the food service industry operated. The offer represented more than just employment. It was a chance at redemption, an opportunity to contribute to something meaningful rather than simply benefiting from someone else's success. Marcus sat in stunned silence, realizing that Elena was offering him the chance to be part of the very dreams they had once shared, but this time as equals rather than as dependent partners struggling against circumstances beyond their control. Marcus accepted Elena's offer with a humility that came from understanding how much he didn't deserve this second chance. Over the following months, he threw himself into his work with an intensity that surprised even Elena. He managed construction projects for 3 new restaurant locations, negotiated with suppliers, and coordinated logistics with the precision of someone who had learned that excellence was the only acceptable form of gratitude. Elena watched him transform from the broken man who had appeared at her kitchen door into someone worthy of the trust she had placed in him. The business expanded at a breathtaking pace, with Elena's innovative approach to sustainable dining attracting attention from major food industry publications and investors across the country. Marcus found himself managing a team of 40 employees across 5 locations, each restaurant becoming a small community hub that provided not just exceptional food, but also employment opportunities for people from backgrounds similar to his and Elena's. They were building something that mattered, something that proved success didn't require stepping on others to reach the top. During one of their weekly business meetings, Elena received a call that would change everything. The caller identified himself as Jonathan Reed, a business journalist from a major financial magazine, and he wanted to write a feature story about Elena's remarkable rise from poverty to becoming one of Texas's most promising young entrepreneurs. The article would include her inspiring backstory, her innovative business model, and her plans for national expansion. What Elena didn't immediately realize was how far this story would travel and who would read it. The magazine article, titled From Heartbreak to Empire, The Elena Vasquez Story, was published 3 months later with Elena on the cover, photographed in front of her flagship restaurant. The story detailed her journey from waitress to CEO, touching briefly on the personal betrayal that had catalyzed her transformation without mentioning Marcus by name. The article praised her resilience, her business acumen, and her commitment to creating opportunities for others who had started with nothing. Within days of publication, the story had been picked up by national news outlets, business blogs, and social media influencers who celebrated Elena as an example of the American dream realized through determination and authenticity. Her restaurants became destinations for people who wanted to support businesses with meaningful stories behind them. Reservations were booked months in advance, and Elena found herself fielding calls from investors offering sums that would have seemed fictional just years earlier. The attention also reached Marcus's former life in ways he hadn't anticipated. Victoria Blackwood, who had spent the past year moving through a series of increasingly desperate relationships, came across the article during a particularly lonely evening in her penthouse. The photograph of Elena, radiant with genuine success, hit Victoria like a slap across the face. Here was the woman her former toy had abandoned her for, now worth more than Victoria herself, and achieving it through merit rather than inheritance. Victoria's reaction was swift and predictable. She called her father, demanding that he investigate Elena's business for any possible legal vulnerabilities, any way they could undermine or acquire her rapidly growing empire. Harold Blackwood, still bitter about Marcus's public humiliation of his daughter, was eager to comply. Within weeks, Elena's restaurants were facing mysterious permit challenges, supply chain disruptions, and health inspections that seemed unusually aggressive and frequent. Elena recognized the pattern of harassment immediately, having learned about corporate warfare during her networking with other entrepreneurs. She suspected the Blackwood connection, but couldn't prove it until one of Harold's former business partners, guilty about his own past complicity in similar tactics, reached out to warn her privately. Armed with this knowledge, Elena made a decision that surprised everyone, including Marcus. Instead of retaliating or seeking legal protection, Elena chose to respond with a boldness that demonstrated just how much she had evolved since her days as a struggling waitress. She called Victoria directly, introducing herself and proposing a meeting that would determine whether this conflict would escalate into a war that could destroy both their businesses or resolve into something more constructive. The call left Victoria speechless, unprepared for Elena's directness and confidence. Elena's voice carried no anger or fear, only the steady assurance of someone who had faced real adversity and discovered that artificial threats held no power over her. She suggested they meet at Elena's flagship restaurant, on neutral ground where they could discuss their situation like the successful businesswomen they both were. Marcus learned about the planned meeting when Elena informed him that she would be taking a personal day to handle some delicate business negotiations. She didn't tell him the specifics, but something in her expression suggested that the conversation would involve more than simple business matters. As Elena prepared for what might be the most important meeting of her career, Marcus realized that the woman he had once underestimated was about to face down the woman who had destroyed their original life together. The meeting between Elena and Victoria took place on a Tuesday afternoon when the restaurant was closed to regular customers, creating an intimate setting that amplified the tension between two women whose lives had been shaped by the same man's choices. Victoria arrived in a chauffeur-driven Bentley, her designer outfit and perfect makeup serving as armor against what she expected would be a confrontation with a vengeful ex-girlfriend. Instead, she found herself facing a poised businesswoman who greeted her with genuine warmth and professional courtesy. Elena had prepared meticulously for this encounter, understanding that Victoria's harassment campaign stemmed from wounded pride rather than genuine business competition. She served Victoria lunch personally, presenting dishes that showcased the artistry and innovation that had made her restaurants legendary. As they ate, Elena spoke about her journey, her failures and victories, her dreams realized through perseverance rather than privilege. She painted a picture of success earned through sleepless nights and relentless determination, success that couldn't be diminished by corporate sabotage or inherited wealth. Victoria listened with growing discomfort as she realized that Elena possessed something she had never been able to acquire despite her family's vast resources: authentic accomplishment. Elena's confidence came from having built something meaningful from nothing, from having transformed personal devastation into professional triumph. Victoria's power, by contrast, felt hollow and borrowed, dependent on her father's reputation and money she had never earned through her own efforts. The conversation took an unexpected turn when Elena addressed the elephant in the room directly, mentioning Marcus by name and acknowledging Victoria's role in destroying their original relationship. But instead of accusation or anger, Elena expressed something that shocked Victoria to her core: gratitude. Elena explained that Victoria's manipulation had ultimately been the greatest favor anyone had ever done for her, forcing her to discover strengths she never knew she possessed and dreams she never would have dared pursue while comfortable in a smaller life. Elena revealed that she knew about the Blackwood family's attempts to undermine her business, but she also made it clear that such tactics were ineffective against someone who had already survived real hardship. She had faced genuine poverty, real betrayal, actual failure, and had emerged stronger from each challenge. Corporate harassment was simply another obstacle to overcome, not a threat to her fundamental security or self-worth. Victoria found herself in the unprecedented position of being outclassed by someone she had considered inferior just years before. Elena's success story made Victoria's own achievements seem shallow and meaningless. While Victoria had inherited wealth and status, Elena had created value from nothing. While Victoria collected men like trophies, Elena had built relationships based on mutual respect and shared purpose. While Victoria wielded power through intimidation, Elena commanded respect through competence and integrity. The meeting concluded with Elena making an offer that left Victoria speechless. Elena proposed that instead of wasting energy on destructive competition, they could explore opportunities for collaboration. Elena's expanding restaurant empire needed high-end real estate in prime locations, exactly the kind of properties the Blackwood Empire specialized in developing. They could create a partnership that would benefit both their businesses while establishing a new paradigm for how conflicts could be resolved through mutual benefit rather than mutual destruction. As Victoria left the restaurant, she carried with her the uncomfortable realization that she had lost more than just Marcus. She had lost the opportunity to become someone worthy of genuine respect and admiration. Elena had taken the raw materials of heartbreak and poverty and forged them into something magnificent, while Victoria had taken inherited advantages and squandered them on petty vengeance and hollow victories. Marcus learned about the meeting's outcome when Elena returned to work the next day with news that the harassment campaign had ended and that the Blackwood Empire might become a business partner rather than an enemy. She didn't share the details of her conversation with Victoria, but Marcus could see in her expression the satisfaction of someone who had faced her demons and emerged victorious not through revenge, but through demonstrating her own worth. In the months that followed, Elena's business continued its meteoric rise, eventually growing into a national franchise that employed thousands of people and revolutionized the restaurant industry's approach to sustainability and community engagement. Marcus remained by her side as her operations manager, their professional relationship built on mutual respect and shared values rather than romantic desperation or financial dependency. The final twist in their story came when Elena received an offer to sell her business empire for an amount that would make her one of the wealthiest self-made women in America. But instead of accepting the windfall, Elena chose to take her company public. sharing the profits with her employees, and creating a model for how businesses could serve their communities while generating wealth. She had learned that true success wasn't measured in dollars accumulated, but in lives improved and dreams realized. Victoria, meanwhile, had used the encounter with Elena as a catalyst for her own transformation, eventually starting a foundation that helped women escape abusive relationships and rebuild their lives. She never married Marcus, never found the fulfillment she had sought through manipulation and control, but she did discover a purpose that gave her inherited wealth genuine meaning. As for Marcus, he had learned the most painful and valuable lesson of all, that love cannot be measured by what someone provides, but by what they inspire you to become. Elena had loved him when he had nothing and had forgiven him when he had everything to lose. In choosing Victoria's wealth over Elena's devotion, he had lost the chance for romantic reunion, but he had gained something perhaps more valuable, the opportunity to prove that redemption was possible through dedicated service to something greater than his own desires.